fans. Welcome back to day 17 of my 31 Frightening Days of Halloween Marathon. Tonight we're going to take a look at the 1981 classic An American Werewolf in London. Now, at this time period in cinema, specifically the year 1981, there were two combating really popular werewolf horror movies that were debuting that same year. That being, of course, An American Werewolf in London and The Howling. So it's really hard to, distinguish and think about the early 1980s werewolf movies without thinking of these two immediately because A, they're classic horror films and they're just so memorable in the werewolf genre. It's just impossible to not think about the werewolf subgenre in the horror community without thinking of those two gems. But tonight, like I said, we're going to be taking a look at An American Werewolf in London, directed by John Landis, starring the likes of David Naughton, Griffin Dunne, and Jenny Agutter. Now, this film is just phenomenal. I mean, really, really top-notch, slick-looking film. The story goes like this. It's about two best friends, played by David Naughton and Griffin Dunne, who are backpacking through London, or, Europe, rather, around those parts. And it isn't until the two backpackers come across a pub in, a remote area of the country, and as they are fleeing the pub for the evening, they're told to stick to the roads, but, they obviously don't pay attention to, the instructions given to them, so they kind of, rear off the roads and get attacked by what we come to realize is a werewolf. Griffin Dunne's character is brutally murdered while David Naughton's character manages to survive with only a few scratches and whatnot. He's holed up in a London hospital for several weeks and is, cared by the nurse Jenny Agutter's character. And it isn't until, his friend Griffin Dunne keeps visiting him in what he believes is horrific nightmares, when in fact Griffin Dunne's decomposing body is actually coming him to warn him of the reality that David is now a werewolf and he must kill himself in order for all of the victims that he will harm to go on to death, because at this point in the film, all of the victims, including Griffin Dunne's character, is going to be in a state of limbo where they're technically the undead. They haven't passed over until the last remaining bloodline of the werewolf is killed, and that is obviously David Naughton's character. Now, the story is just really, really phenomenal, and it's really interesting to see a really top-notch horror film come out of the mind of somebody like John Landis, who up until that point was really prominent in the comedy genre. As many of you guys know, he was really John Landis is mainly known up until that point for the classic Animal House and a lot of just really top-notch comedies. I mean, his other films as years went on would include Coming to America, Trading Places, Beverly Hills Cop 3, in addition to shortly after filming An American Werewolf in London in 1983, he would go and shoot the first segment of the Twilight Zone movie. But up until that point in time, Landis had really just been seen as a really prominent figure in the comedy genre. So when he pulled out and wrote and directed this film, it was really, a real curveball for him. And, thank God that he did, because it is just phenomenal. This film really walks that really wonderful line of funny but frightening. When it wants to be funny, it can be really hilarious, and a lot of that goes to the credit of the chemistry between David Naughton and Griffin Dunne. I mean, these guys are just really funny. The second they hit the screen, you really feel like those could be my buddies. I mean, I could totally walk down the streets and into a pub and bullshit with these guys and really get into their heads, talk about chicks, the whole 9 yards. I mean, you really feel comfortable, being in their presence. They're funny, likable guys, and, the humor that comes out of their discussions prior to the werewolf attack, and especially after, when Griffin Dunne's character is, more, slowly becoming more and more of a decomposing victim until he's practically down to, a skeletal frame. It's just, their connection is just really great. I mean, they're funny, likable guys, and it's just really great to see, their interactions together on screen. And secondly, when this film wants to be frightening, holy shit, can it scare you. I mean, when the werewolf comes out of nowhere. I mean, just silence, and then you just hear the growl, and then a quick, shot of the werewolf just coming into frame and attacking its victims. It's truly startling. I mean, it will really keep you on the edge of your seat because 1 second you feel really comfortable laughing along with these characters, and then moments later it's a vicious attack, and then you're really scared. I mean, it really is, a fine line of like, should I be laughing or should I be scared? And it really does juggle that line of, you being able to enjoy a good laugh, but then, having the shit scared out of you. And it's phenomenal. I mean, achieving a feat like that in any film is really tough to do. So, to have a film like this where it captures it, in my opinion, perfectly, it's a real treat for any movie fan. Now, moving on for that, I think another, one of the most notable things that this film has going for itself is, of course, the wonderful, wonderful special effects and makeup job at the hands of Rick Baker. Rick Baker's job on this is still, the achievements that he managed to accomplish in An American Werewolf in London still hold up today. I mean, you watch the transformation, the first transformation scene, which clocks in at around just about an hour on the dot in the film. It is truly breathtaking what Baker and company did with these effects. In a fully lit room, you see a fully evolving werewolf transformation. It is just breathtaking. Every time you watch it, you notice something different. And even in 2009, with all these wonderful CGI effects and advancements in technology, I would put Rick Baker's job in this film against anybody's job up until then, because it still holds up magnificently. I mean, if you want to try and get into the makeup business, you want to shoot and to aim and do what Rick Baker did in this film, because it is just incredible, just fully incredible. I mean, think about that. In 1981, when you're told by a director to achieve what he did in a fully lit room, when you have the lack of shadows and the darkness trying, helping you out in a sense, to do it in a fully lit room with, no cuts or anything, that is just, it's magic. That's exactly what it is. Rick Baker created magic in this transformation scene. And, in addition to, the wonderful werewolf effects, there's also the great makeup effects on, as I stated earlier, the, continuous decomposing body of the Griffin Dunn character, as well as a dream sequence where these zombie Nazis invade David Naughton's character's house, and they're just phenomenal. I mean, it's a brief scene, but still, really memorable. I mean, as you can see on my shirt, which you can buy from FrightRags.com, you see the creatures actually on the shirt, and those makeup designs are really, really phenomenal and really tight. And as well as, the makeup effects, the fine line of frightening and funny in this film, you also get a really great relationship and, really good romance thrown into the mix with David Naughton and Jenny Aguter's character. She plays the nurse, as I had stated earlier, and their chemistry on screen is really, really great. I mean, it really does get developed. You really get a real sense of true attraction between the characters, and it really is wonderful. As many of you guys may or may not know, actually, Jenny Agutter, you can actually see her, after American Werewolf in London. I mean, before I got really hooked into this film, I had always, growing up, I had always, linked her to Child's Play 2, where she played Andy's adoptive mom, if you guys actually remember that. So, it's funny to see after, from 1981 all the way to 1990, it's just interesting to see how, the characters and actors just keep kind of jumping back into the horror game. So it's really cool to see that she appeared in the Child's Play 2 movie and gets fucked up by Chucky. Her death scene is really cool when you see what happens to her. And as well, I have to say that as frightening and funny as it is, this film certainly ends off on a real tragic note. With Jenny's character saying how much she loves David Naughton's character and then him just dying. It's pretty tragic ending and really effectful. So honestly, if you guys have never seen this, check it out. The Blu-ray looks phenomenal. This film has never looked better. Sound and picture quality looks incredible on the Blu-ray, and the Beware the Moon documentary is unbelievable. They talk to everybody. It's really comprehensive and incredibly informative. So if you guys haven't seen this, pop this sucker out for the Halloween season. It's phenomenal, and you will not be disappointed. As always, thanks again for tuning into my 31 Frightening Days of Halloween Marathon, and I'll see you guys tomorrow with yet another review. This is Frightener22.